Hello and welcome back to Life on the Wrist. Hope you're doing well. Today we're going to be looking at two Tudor Prince oyster dates from the 1980s and having a discussion on smooth bezels versus fluted bezels. When comparing a smooth versus a steel bezel, I think this is a really easy comparison because you have two references, each of them from Tudor, but very, very similar styles of watchmaking. And so I think this comparison will be quite true to what you would actually get with the difference between a smooth and steel bezel. I obviously will wanted to say this at the top of the video that all the opinions that are spoken about during this video are, of course, my opinions. If you have differing opinions, that's great. Make sure to put it in the comment section below. So I'll start off with a piece that you have seen already, and that's this. We can kind of have them side by side while we sort of speak through them, just to give you a high-level overview of what these watches actually are. On the left-hand side is a Tudor Prince Oyster Date reference 75203, manufactured in 1987. The watch has a stainless steel case with a gold fluted bezel in 18 karat gold. It also has what is described as a linen dial, which is obviously sort of this pattern dial that you see on this watch. The pattern is essentially just a finishing that is applied to gold to a surface. It isn't actually linen. However, there are watches that actually do come with a piece of linen as the dial, but this one just is called a linen dial because of how it looks. The watch is running on the caliber 28-24 automatic winding movement, which is a real workhorse movement that Tudor used throughout this time period. On the left-hand side, in contrast to this fluted bezel Tudor Oyster Date, is the reference 74000. This Oyster Date was manufactured in 1984, and obviously, as you can see, has a smooth stainless steel bezel that matches the stainless steel case of the watch. You can see the dial has aged just slightly, so it kind of has a nice little bit of a creamy hue to it, but really is quite a traditional 74000. Similar to the reference 75203, it runs on the caliber 28-24 movement. Now, getting into the comparing and contrasting of these two pieces, I think the first thing that any person would likely stumble on when considering the differences between a fluted bezel and a stainless steel bezel is preferences in metal. Now, of course, smooth bezels versus stainless steel bezels are oftentimes reserved for Rolexes or Tudors, specifically the Datejust models or the Tudor Prince Oyster dates that you see in front of you here. These are obviously vintage iterations, but this compare and contrast definitely has some relevance in today's time period with the watches being released as well. So back to the first point that I wanted to discuss, that is the preference in metals. Now, obviously on the left-hand side, you have an 18 karat gold bezel, and on the right-hand side, you have a stainless steel smooth bezel. Now, of course, some people have preferences when wearing specific metals. A stainless steel bezel is a little bit less loud, a little bit more under the radar, whereas the gold in this specific piece is obviously going to stand out on the wrist, and so that is something that some people consider. There's also something to consider when it comes to the value of each of these metals. Obviously, the 18 karat gold is going to be a little bit more costly than the stainless steel. And then the last piece is really what I think is quite important is the durability of these metals. Obviously, 18 karat gold is going to be a fairly durable carat of gold. However, stainless steel is also quite durable, and so you get some differences in the durability of the metal, but really it comes down to personal preference. Do you prefer something that is going to be seen on the wrist, like this gold, especially in this fluted, with this fluted finishing on the bezel is going to obviously catch light in different areas. As you can see, it kind of sparkles, whereas the stainless steel really doesn't. It catches some of the light, but not as obviously as the gold bezel on the 75-203. Now, we touched on this a little bit, but obviously thinking about the actual finishing of the metal is extremely important. When you look at this fluted bezel, it's obviously got quite an attractive and ornate finish to it. Let me see if I can get a little bit of an inch here. But as you can see, the bezel has quite an ornate and quite a nice finishing in this fluted pattern that you see on the bezel of itself. Now, of course, similar to the actual metal that this watch is made in, the fluted bezel is going to stand out a lot more obviously, as opposed to this being a smooth pattern. As you can see, it catches the light in many different angles and kind of allows it to shimmer when it's on the wrist. I really like this, especially with the linen dial, because it does it is quite a bit of a statement when you see it. It's quite obvious on the wrist. I paired it with this blue strap, which I think goes really well with gold, especially this type of gold. I remember back in 2017 we actually covered a Rolex with a smooth gold bezel, which was really, really nice, and it had a blue mosaic dial. Another example of why it's really nice. What you're getting here is a much louder, a much more precious and a little bit more ornate in its design. Contrasting that with something like this fluted bezel, this smooth bezel, what you have in the design is something a lot more simplistic. What you have is you don't have a design that's going to be stand out very, very obviously. It's going to be a blank canvas that can be applied to whatever surface that you want. In this case, you've got a stainless steel case and a white dial, so you've got quite a plain, quite a simplistic bezel on this, which is really in contrast to the fluted bezel, where this is a lot more muted, and the fluted bezel is a little bit more loud. I think combining all of these characteristics is where we kind of move on to the topic of appearance. The first piece I wanted to consider is style. I'll then go on to comfort and what I describe as statement. So when it comes to style, I think with a smooth bezel, what you're getting is something a little bit more simplistic. A blank canvas, because of the way that the watch is designed, and I think that allows you to do a little bit more with the watch. Obviously, the smooth bezel might be considered a little bit more of a tool inspired piece. You can see this being worn in casual settings, especially with the date. It's a really great everyday watch, and that is always something that people are considering if they can wear this in specific environments. Now, if we contrast that with the fluted bezel, what you have here is something that's still a little bit casual, but it's going to be a lot more dressy. When you have gold on the wrist, especially for men, it's going to stand out a lot more. It's going to be a lot more obvious, and a lot of the times when you have gold, it makes things a little bit dressier. So especially with this linen dial, this piece is wonderful if you have sort of a more formal event to go to, or perhaps you want to wear something a little bit more formal to work. This is a wonderful example. Moving on to comfort, I think what it really comes down to when it comes to comfort, and what I was considering with this sort of category of appearance, is what do you feel comfortable? What do you feel comfortable wearing on the wrist? I think a lot of people will gravitate towards being a little bit more muted, especially if you are a man wearing these watches. Men tend to like to, when it comes to jewelry, not be too loud with the things that they're wearing on their wrists or on their hands, and so a lot of the times they'll gravitate a little bit more towards something that looks a little bit more tooly, a little bit more understated, and what you get is this what the preference would be is the Tudor Prince Estate with a smooth bezel, especially considering the dial color and the case materials. I think the smooth bezel also is sort of has that understated nature. The fluted bezel, though, is something that I think men would also gravitate towards. If they're looking for something a little bit more dressy, something that's going to be a little bit more of a statement, this is obviously going to be something that they would end up wearing. Now, I'm only speaking from the perspective of men, because I am I am a man. But I'd love to hear if there are any women watching this video, which one you would probably gravitate a little bit more towards. But I think the thought process would be quite similar. If you're looking for something a little bit dressier, a little bit louder, or something a little bit more classy, I think you're probably going to gravitate towards the fluted bezel. And I think to summarize this, we'll move on to sort of the statement is what I've kind of coined it. And that is, I think what you're going to do with a fluted bezel is make a statement when someone sees it on your wrist. I think both pieces are going to end up making a statement. Oh, sorry about that, focus. I think both pieces are going to end up making a statement when they're on the wrist, especially considering these pieces are really beautiful pieces to be worn on the wrist. I think you're probably going to be noticed a lot more with the fluted bezel as opposed to the smooth bezel, considering its appearance. But I guess, what statement do you want to make? Do you want to make something a statement that's a little bit more understated, a little bit less loud, or perhaps maybe you want to you'll be wearing maybe an outfit that is the statement, and you want your watch to sort of be in the background, or just enhance the outfit in a very subtle way, as opposed to the fluted bezel, where this is probably going to be a lot more of the statement that you're going to be making. I touched on this throughout the video, but I do think that I want to make one last hat tip to this concept, and that is sort of the utility of the piece. I think a smooth bezel is something you're probably going to end up wearing every day. It's going to be very, very utilitarian. It gives that feel off with the simplistic nature of the design of this specific piece, especially considering the single metal that is used in this piece along with the white dial, as opposed to this dressier piece that uses two metals, gold and stainless steel, and is probably going to be worn or the utility of it is going to go beyond just sort of telling time, but also enjoying or being in a dressier environment. To be honest, I was trying to think about what my personal opinion was, which one I would prefer, and to be honest, I think I would wear them both. I find myself probably gravitating a little bit more towards something like the smooth bezel. It's just my personal preference and style. However, I really love linen dials, and I think this is a really excellent and beautiful example of how a linen dial can look really great. So these pieces really are both exceptional and ones that you can enjoy. And I hope at least this video has helped you in maybe identifying which type of bezel you prefer on your watches, or just makes you consider things that perhaps you haven't considered in the past. So I hope that this helps, and I wish you the best of luck in deciding which one you prefer. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at these two Tudor Prince oyster dates with very different bezels. You've got the reference 74000 with a stainless steel case and smooth stainless steel bezel, and then there was the reference 75203, I think, with a fluted bezel, 18 karat gold fluted bezel, and a gold linen dial. These pieces are obviously in design they are very, very similar, but in aesthetics they really are in contrast, and sometimes it's very difficult to figure out which one would be your preference. I hope some of the topics that we discussed in this video helped you maybe ask yourself questions about what you prefer, and maybe got you a little bit closer to finding what your preference is when it comes to these types of watches. Obviously these pieces are from the 1980s, but today it's still a very relevant discussion considering the pieces that are being released by Tudor and Rolex. These bezels are iconic, these models are iconic, and so it's something that is going to be considered, I think, long into the future as the success of these watches sort of continues. I hope you got something out of it, and if you did and you have an opinion on which one you prefer, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Let me know, fluted or smooth bezels, which one is your preference? There'll be a link in the description of this video to an article that we wrote about this specific topic. It'll be the first link in the description at lifeonthewrist.com, so be sure to check that out. If you are new to Life on the Wrist, be sure to subscribe to the channel and share this video with a friend who might be interested in watches. And lastly, guys, if you wouldn't mind liking this video, it really does help the channel out. With that said, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and until next time.